Welcome to It's No Secret, a podcast for those who want their money questions answered.
Join us as we talk to real Kiwis and share truths about our own financial lives, because the truth is, there is no secret to achieving financial freedom.
Rebekah, welcome to It's No Secret. Thank you so much for joining on the podcast today. Very excited to chat and dive in.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Before we start talking about money, I thought you could introduce yourself. Who are you? Why are you here? Why you love talking about money? Or maybe you don't and I've just managed to convince you to come on.
Who am I?
Yeah.
Big question. I'm Rebekah. I work as the head of human resources at Citta, which is a New Zealand furniture and design brand. I also work as an electrolysis in my spare time, which is a bit of a side hustle for me and something I've got off the ground this year. We'll talk about that more. And apart from that, yeah, what am I? Who am I? I don't know.
You'll find out. Keep listening.
I relatively enjoy talking about money, though. I
Yeah.
feel like it's something I've had to learn a lot more about as like you go on a bit of a journey with money, right? It's an important relationship for all of us. And yeah, I feel like I'm more empowered to talk about it these days. So excited to dive in.
Fun. And so before we talk about money also, what is an
Electrologist. Okay, so basically it is a person who practices electrolysis, which is a form of permanent hair removal. It's actually the only medically recognised form of permanent hair removal. So other methods are like hair reduction. But I got into this because I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And one of my main symptoms of that has been hirsutism, which is like excess unwanted hair, basically. So I've been personally getting electrolysis since my teenage years. And yeah, it's just something that they were training less and less in New Zealand. I noticed it was kind of a bit of a dying art. And I wanted to make sure it continued to be available for people that needed it. So I invested in learning all about it, and now am at the stage where I can actually treat people. So it's really exciting.
That is so exciting. I didn't know this about you until recently.
Big passion.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to get onto the house chat soon, but you are now kind of running your own little clinic out of your house. Is that right?
I am. Yes, I am.
The side hustle is real.
It's been a big year. Look,
She bought the house. She's turned it into a business.
Yeah, look, send me a challenge, you know. But yeah, no, I'm running it out of my house, and for me, that was actually a big part of my home buying journey, was finding a space that I could work from. Because given I work a full-time job and I want to continue doing that, I love my job, it meant that I was going to need to do my electrolysis work in evenings and weekends. And, you know, yes, like you could rent a commercial space or something like that, but I just felt like when I'm starting out, I just wanted to keep the overheads as low as possible, and also be able to treat people at any time that I've got free. And it's a lot easier to just do a few sessions after work, pack up, make my dinner, you know?
roll in from the kitchen. And
yeah, totally. So it's going quite well. I'm kind of averaging like 3 or 4 clients a week at the moment, which is great given I started like a couple of months ago. You know?
That's
so,
awesome.
I'd been treating people earlier in a different clinic, but this is my first like my own baby thing. So
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, how cool. Well, congrats. I mean, on the starting of the business more, and then also the home purchase. But let's rewind a little bit back to the beginning of Rebekah's money story. So baby Rebekah. What was your relationship with money like growing up, and how has this evolved over time?
Okay. I feel like growing up, I was always very cognizant of money. So my family moved from Hawke's Bay to Auckland when I was 5. And with that came like a lot of financial challenge for my family. So it's something that I was just hyper aware of as a kid. Even down to things like, I remember when I got old enough to do the math, I totaled up for my parents like $5 a week that we spend on lotto tickets back in the day when they were $5.
Yeah. Sounds cheap.
52 weeks of the year, guys. We could save $260. And I genuinely thought, like, guys, I've solved every money issue you've ever had. Like, mic drop.
Yeah,
that's
so
us.
sweet though.
Yeah, my parents were like, no, that's not going to help. So yeah, very aware of it. And then as soon as I got old enough, we were all encouraged to start working, my sisters and I. And really that was also to teach us some responsibility and the value of money. And from that age onwards, I think like about 15, 16, I started working. And you always hold a job. Like in my family, that was just kind of the expected thing. And pay for your own wants. Like they'd cover the main expenses, but if you wanted additional things or to go on a holiday or go away with friends or something, I covered all of that. And so for me, from that age, it really ingrained like a savings focus. I was very like conserve the money. It meant that like I wouldn't go away for New Year's with my friends. I was like, that's peak season, baby, I'm working. Let's go.
It's so true.
Yeah, they need me, I'm there.
Get the overtime.
Yeah, get the
public holidays, right?
Yeah, public holidays, the dream. So yeah, a strong like retail background throughout my childhood and like teenage years. Yeah, and then I think overall though, the financial literacy for me was pretty low. Like aside from save, and the idea of like keeping your expenses below your income, I didn't really understand anything. Interest, what's that?
Yeah.
Any kind of bigger picture stuff, I just didn't really have any awareness of. Yeah.
But even knowing to not live beyond your means is like a great grounding or baseline to then continue from, right? Because I would then assume you didn't get credit card debt or anything like that.
No, not at all. And my parents ingrained a very strong like work ethic. They both work incredibly hard, and like work incredibly hard for our family and stuff as well, and on the house and all of that. So they really like ingrained that kind of work ethic, that if you do good by your employer as well, then you're going to be looked after and all that sort of thing. So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool. And so when did investing come into the mix, or how did we get to home ownership?
Yeah, how did we get to home ownership? Good question. I feel like, well, it kind of wasn't something I was considering earlier, like in my 20s, that probably wasn't in the picture. But I think as Kiwis, we kind of all grow up with that like Kiwi dream, buy your own place.
Yeah.
And the country is like verifiably obsessed with property, right? But like a lot of people our age, I guess I didn't really expect that it would be something that was on the horizon for me. Like I didn't really see how I would get there. And then what happened? I guess I ended up with my savings focus. I ended up with a lot of savings. She was cash rich. Cash rich with options. Yeah.
Soon to be asset rich.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I was kind of like, what's next? Like you get to a certain age as well, you want to set down more roots and be like, okay, like build something for yourself, And I was kind of staring down the barrel of like the next like 5 to 10 years of my life being like, what do I want this to look like? So I think like initially with home ownership, as I said, I thought it wasn't really for me. I know we've talked about this, but I was following the work of Rebekah a lot, and really love his content online, and had thought a lot about My Rich Life.
Yes, I love Rebekah.
It's so good.
It
right?
is really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about how like home ownership doesn't need to be a default. Like you don't have to own your own home. And as I'd like got exposed to that idea a bit more, I was like, it is a lot of like social conditioning that makes you think you need a house. And you don't really need a house. Like you can rent comfortably forever if you want to, So I was unpacking a lot of that and was kind of turning myself off the idea. And then life kind of happens. I think the key things like that were very personal to me and my circumstances were that like I had the income to be able to afford it, and I had the savings behind me to be able to do that, which is also, life just kind of landed me there. Like you don't plan for that, you just end up in that situation. Like I feel like if I had dependents, it wouldn't have been doable, right? Or in different circumstances wouldn't necessarily have been the thing. So that then wanting to start the business, so looking for a space with that. And then another big thing for me was actually like quite personal, but kind of the relationship equation. Like I realized that because she's a single gal, and I realized that I was kind of almost waiting for a partner in a way to feel like I could buy a house. And then I was like, hold up, I'm good for this. Like, I can do it by myself.
I'm an independent woman, thank you. Yeah.
But kind of like, you know, I know people can sometimes feel like that. Like, I know amongst my girlfriends and stuff, it's a thought that you hear a lot, and that's some people that obviously can't afford it by themselves, but you can go in with friends, you could go in with family to buy. Those options hadn't come to fruition for me, and I realized I was kind of feeling like I couldn't without a partner. And so then when I became conscious of that, I was like, ooh, so I want to dig deeper in this. And I actually found out that in New Zealand, I was talking to like a friend of a friend at a wedding, and she was saying that basically up until the 90s, women couldn't get a mortgage out alone in New Zealand. You had to have a male relative co-sign, or like guarantee your mortgage. And the story this woman was telling me was basically about this like relative in their family who had never married. Her father had died, and so he couldn't guarantee the mortgage. And both her brothers-in-law weren't good for it to be able to do that. Like, financially, they weren't in a position to. And so that woman rented the same council flat all of her working life. She was very established in her career, like had a very successful career, and ended up dying in the same flat that she rented, having like dreamed of home ownership her whole life, but never able to get there because of the barriers to getting a mortgage for women. So like, I heard that story and I was like,
I need to do it for her.
Yeah, exactly. Do it for the ladies, you know? So, yeah, it's fascinating.
It
our
is
history
fascinating.
with that.
Yeah.
I think also quite, like, historically more difficult for Māori to get a mortgage, which is interesting. So, yeah.
Why is that?
I'm not entirely sure. Like, I've tried to look into that more, but I think just like banks and lending rules and everything. I mean, we know in our time period how it's been, like, the rules change and banks determine what's more of a safe bet for them, I guess. But just interesting that, historically it was women and Māori that found it more difficult or needed other people to guarantee getting a mortgage.
Yeah,
crazy.
Right. That is crazy. Yeah. And so I mean, I feel inspired listening to this, definitely.
Thank you.
So go you.
Yeah.
Here for, advocating for yourself.
Thank you.
And also not letting, that hold you back from getting to a financial goal of home ownership. So, I mean, some questions spring to mind. Firstly, how did you afford it as a single person?
Yeah. So, with a lot of savings.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of hard work, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I'd been regularly investing in KiwiSaver since I started working, and as I said, I started working young. Yeah. So that helped me, definitely. Yeah. And then I had a really strong savings focus, and so I'd been saving up, keeping my expenses really low. Yeah. And I think, home ownership wasn't really as much in the immediate plan. Like, I was actually planning on going on like a big solo YOLO overseas trip.
And fun.
Yeah. And things change. Like, life just kind of serves you up a different hand, and you're like, okay, what's next? And so, as I said, then the money was there, and I was quite grateful to be able to have the money to invest in it. And it was all my own money, so that was a big thing too. Like, my parents, they have been an incredible support throughout, but they always said, like, you can continue living at home for as long as you need to get like a good deposit behind you, but that's really the like level to which we can help you, like, financially. Good luck,
But also, like, that's amazing at the same time, right? That they can give you that as well. And you get to hang out with your parents more, which is nice.
Flatties.
Mum and dad. How was that?
Oh, look, like, I think we get along incredibly well, which helps. But certainly, like, it comes with its sacrifices, and for them too, probably. Like, they're probably like, enough.
You're an adult now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, like, sacrifices on both sides. For us, like, they were really respectful in terms of, like, when I was living there, treat me like an adult. We had more of a flatmate situation, like, she's got a shelf in the fridge, don't mess with it, and also, like, they were quite, like, they work quite long hours and stuff, so we're kind of ships passing in the night. Like, just because we lived together, it didn't mean I saw them all the time, and I think that kind of helped give us a bit of space and breathing room too. And we are incredibly fortunate that they have the house and the space that allowed it. Like, I kind of had my own separate level and set up and stuff, so that made things easier.
Nice. That's awesome. Love that. And so you've got your deposit built up, then what? Like, how did you go about buying the house? Did you use a broker, go straight to the bank? Location?
Good question. I think it brought up a lot for me in terms of, like, where do I even want to buy? What do I even want? Am I going to be like an apartment gal in the city doing her thing, or am I going to be like out west? Is she becoming a Westie now? That was the question.
And then she ended up where?
In Beach Haven.
On the shore.
Beach Haven through and through, born and bred. So yeah, it's interesting. I think how I started like looking at going to open homes, and that gets you a bit excited. Then if you see something you actually want, and I found this quite early on, then you're quite underprepared, because you're like, I don't have a lawyer, I don't know, I don't have a mortgage broker, I don't know, what am I good for, you know? So then I started talking to mortgage brokers, kind of figuring out what they said I could afford. I didn't personally go straight to the bank initially, and then those conversations just kind of unfolded, and you find your like team, really, because they are people you're working with long term to find the right space. And in the beginning, I had a mortgage broker say to me, like, like one of my first conversations, he's like, oh, cool, you know, so about 12 months is the average, so, you know, you'll have a house within, like, by 12 months. And I was like, dude, we're doing this tomorrow, you know? Especially one of my sisters had bought her house in a week. She'd been like, we're looking, and then the next week we bought our house. So I kind of thought,
so rare. Wow.
She moves quick. Yeah. So I kind of thought, like, I kind of had different expectations around that. Yeah.
So how long did it take you?
It took about a year.
Okay, so this guy was on the money. Yeah, nice.
And I think another massive thing for me, so probably within that time, I offered on, I want to say about 3 places. And I went to one auction that I was, like, prepared to bid at. Which costs you a lot as a first home buyer as well. So, like, heads up. Just because you have to, like, do all your due diligence ahead of time. So if you get it at the auction, like, if you end up being the successful person, you need to have done your building report. You need to have, like, probably had a valuation. The bank might require that. That can cost you, like, upwards of $800. So yeah, she's spinning to do that. But you learn a lot each time, you know? Yeah.
You're also, we're going to come back to this later, but you're a lawyer by trade, right? So
by trade.
Did that help you?
My lawyer said it did. I didn't personally feel, I think I'm just confident to have a conversation. And
she knows how to negotiate.
Well, I hope so. And I'll read it. Like, I'll read all the stuff to be like, is this, like, legit? Do I feel comfortable? And I think it also helps, like, you know, when you're going alone to these things, like, and, like, you're batting for yourself, you know, there's no like partner to defer to, no one else to have that chat with. And so you do have to, like, take your time and be confident to say, I don't know. I actually don't know what you're talking to me about. I don't understand. Can you explain that again? And I have no qualms doing that. Like, I've got zero shame saying, I don't understand, please explain that again. Because it's my money and it's my name on the dotted line at the end of the day, you know? So that was really important to me too. But yeah, I had, just coming back to my lawyer, the MVP of a lawyer. Like, he was the guy. He's Angus Grayson from House Me Legal.
What is it? Ask Me Legal.
House Me Legal.
House Me Legal.
Yeah.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to Angus, because he really specializes in helping first home buyers. And he had, like, I found him on LinkedIn, and he had these incredible guides, like, so many guides. And basically I ended up offering on this house and hadn't engaged a lawyer or anything. And I was just reading through all his guides like, yep, okay, I got this. Done. I just did everything it said. And then I emailed him and was like, hey, look, so here's the contract. Can you just real quick look over this for me? I followed all your advice. And so that kind of started off our working together. And And yeah, it was about a year to the day that I ended up getting my house. So.
I feel like you'd be like a dream student for a lawyer as well,
Yeah.
right? Because he's like, you're already doing 80% of the work. Like, I just have to do the final, rest of it.
Well, I like keep on top of my stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like I know what's going on. And if I'm asked for a form, like I love a form. Yeah, I'll fill out that
I
form.
love a PDF.
Yeah, I'll sign the shit out of that, you know. It was good.
That was so
It was
good.
fun. Yeah.
So who else was on your team? You mentioned a valuer and a building inspector.
Well,
A
valuer
report?
and building inspector, you really just tap in when you need them. You don't
Yeah.
form that relationship so much. Like I felt like I had a mortgage broker. He would like be like, oh, you need to get a valuation for this, or it's time to get a building inspector. Angus was recommending like building inspectors and stuff. So I feel like your key ones are like a mortgage broker that you're comfy with and a lawyer that you're comfy with. Because that really like makes all the difference. And then you also need like your personal people, like your trusted advisors, whether that's family or friends or a partner or whatever. You need people to bounce ideas around with and be like, is this me?
Yeah.
You know, is this house me? Am I getting like swept up here? Like, is this actually going to be what I need?
Yeah.
Which was really important. As I said, I felt like I was like trying on different lives. As I saw different places, I'd be like, she's a city gal, or like, okay.
This is my local cafe.
Yeah, totally. And for a while I was looking out in Citta too as well, and I'm like, okay, like the coffee shops around here, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna be doing this, you know, townhouse life. And yeah, it's so funny how it comes full circle, and the place I've ended up is like everything, like it's all of my dreams come true.
That's
It's
so
everything I
great.
would have wanted. So yeah,
That's so great. So you had to go through those kind of 3 before to get,
you
you
gotta
know.
kiss a lot of frogs, you know.
I'm loving all these analogies that you're bringing today. It's so good. I wanted to come back to the mortgage broker.
Yeah.
How did you know, like, that relationship you said is really important?
Yeah.
I've had personal experiences where I've, you know, met a broker and twice actually, where I'm just like, oh, you're just not really for me. Like, you're not my person.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dating, you know, someone up front and then making the commitment.
Yeah.
For you, what did you look for? Like, what was the thing that you're like, you're my person?
Time, like I just needed a person, and I get what you mean, because I felt like I definitely had that where I'd talk to people in the beginning, and I think it's really easy for a mortgage broker to forget the different levels of financial literacy they might be dealing with, and particularly for first home buyers, like I don't understand everything, you know, so I need it all explained, you know, like a mortgage, what's that going to look like? Repayments, what's that going to look like? How are we going to structure my mortgage? You know, all of that stuff. And I think for a first home buyer, these are all the thoughts that you're having when you're going to an open home. Like, you're at the beginning stages. If you've already got a mortgage, you know how that stuff works and you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But if you've never had one before, you're like, that's the stuff keeping you up at night, you know? So you really do need someone to like hold your hand and sing Kumbaya, you know?
There it is again. Love it.
Sorry.
Keep going. It's
Some
good.
riddles.
I love it.
And yeah, so I think like for me, it just got to the point where I needed someone. Someone was recommended by a friend. I trusted that friend. I was like, yep, okay, let's go, you know? Do I feel like I probably still always had a million questions? Yes. Google will also be your friend, you know, and family and stuff that you can be like, how does your mortgage work? You know, like we don't talk about it enough. We don't actually like with your friends or with your family, you don't ask like, so how big are we talking? You know?
What's the debt?
Yeah, exactly.
Like 1, 2, 4 million?
Yeah, exactly. And how their repayments work and how it's structured. Like, it's all scary stuff. Or it feels scary when you don't know. So I feel like for me anyway, when you're shopping around for a home, there's 3 things. You're needing to learn about mortgages and the financial side of it, and a mortgage broker will help with that. You're needing to learn about like real estate agents and the buying of a house and how that game works, because it ain't buying a pair of shoes, you know. It ain't like it's not like, here's the shoe, here's the price, you pay the price, you get the shoe. Like that ain't
That's not it.
that's not it.
Yeah.
It's cloak and dagger. You're like, how much for this house? And they're like, how much do you think for this house?
And then you're like, well, the CV says this, and then the market's doing this, so I'm going to shave off this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But learning how that goes is just like an absolute mindfuck, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and you do feel a little bit like some real estate agents are great, and like some of the people I encountered were phenomenal and taught me stuff. Like, would take time maybe to get a sale potentially, but you know, who cares about the motivation? They taught me, they taught me good stuff and good tips that then helped me in my journey, you know. Other ones, it can feel a bit pushy, it can feel a bit sleazy, and that's a bit yucky, especially as a first-time buyer where you're like, I don't know, like I feel like the wool's being pulled over my eyes, or I'm somehow being taken advantage of, but how? Because I don't understand, you know?
Yeah. Well, and there's just so much detail as well. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. So you're like, oh, am I crossing all my T's and dotting all my I's to make sure that I have a full oversight of all the things I could be missing as well?
100%. And I think they need to be really cognizant of that too. Like, they can't forget the power that they kind of wield, you know?
Yeah.
Or the, like, you know, tensions are high, emotions are high, you're under stress, you want this thing. If they're really talking you into it, like, that's their job, but it's also their job to do the due diligence and, you know, inform you of all of the things that you need to know. And yeah, I guess it changes as well depending on who you're dealing with. Like, I had one of the houses I offered on, they got me out to sign the sale and purchase agreement, like, of my offer. After hours, the site was fully packed up. It was 2 male real estate agents, like, standing over me at a table. And I just stood up and was like, guys, I'm not comfy. I'm going. Yeah. I'm out. Because I'm like, you've got to be aware that, like, I'm a woman. This isn't, like, feeling comfortable for me. And also, like, you know, it's your job to make sure that I am comfortable. Like, you shouldn't want me to just sign on the dotted line. You should want me to be confident in what I'm doing, and feel like, yes, this is the way forward. So you just encounter all sorts, like in any school of, like, life. That's the wrong saying. You know what I mean? In any area of life, you encounter all sorts, and you do have to, as you say, shop around for your people, but also not be afraid to say, no, there's something off here, there's something wrong here. You do have to really tap in and listen to your intuition, because, you know, it is your life and it is your money, and it's going to be against your name, you know. So important things.
I feel like there's, you know, my brain went to, that's the difference between a terrible salesperson and a great salesperson, and understanding the buyer, really, and the, like, emotions and the motivations and how to connect with their buyer. So obviously those people didn't do that because they ultimately didn't get the sale, right? But then also, to your point about knowing when to say no, or knowing, like, what your boundaries are, I feel like that comes back to ultimately just knowing yourself and being confident in your decision making and your approach and what's right for you. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast around buying property in the first place versus not, and what you talked about earlier in terms of the FOMO that exists in the market, or just in this country, about property being the way, like, it is.
FOMO is so the right word for it.
It is, right?
Absolutely is FOMO.
Like, oh, so-and-so has our property. Oh my God, I need one too. Like, but that might just not suit you at all, really.
No, exactly. And like, comparison really is the thief of joy. Like, you think it's all glamour, and you see people on Instagram, you know, like, new house, you know.
New me.
Yeah, new house, new me.
New furniture, new cheetah stuff.
Yeah, new cheetah stuff. And you don't see what goes on behind the scenes, like the heartbreak of the house that they missed, or like that they might not want the situation that they're in, you know? Like,
or the impact that the mortgage might have on their mental health.
Yeah, on their mental health, or on their actual day-to-day lifestyle. Like, that's a big switch up, you know? Or like friends that I've talked to about, like, you know, some people find themselves in a situation where they have money because of a loss, and then, you know, they've lost someone in their lives, or something's happened, and they have this money, and that affords them the opportunity to have the house. They might not necessarily be wanting to be like new house, new me, yay. It's such a highlights reel, you know, like, you don't see all of that suffering that goes on behind the scenes. And I really firmly believe, like, there's beauty in that struggle, you know, like, that's what really crafts us and makes us who we are. And like, it's all of those challenges, and it's all of that learning along the way that, like, makes you more of you. So it's been really like, it was more stressful buying the house than getting the house,
Yeah, right.
Like I found the buying journey really quite harrowing. But actually, just to come back to that, it was kind of the three things I was saying was like
number 3. Yeah.
the number 3 is went on. What was 1 and 2?
It was real estate agent.
Yeah, real estate agents and learning that game.
And the mortgages
And
understanding
that game. The third one is the house itself and actually learning like the practicalities of a home, like,
gardening, DIY,
maintenance. Like
rates.
people will be like, oh yeah, this looks dry. And you're like, what looks dry?
It's soaking wet.
Yeah, or like anything about the house,
Yeah.
like you kind of got to learn all about that stuff. Or someone like a building inspector will be like, oh, a bit of lamination here, delamination on the whatever. And you're like,
Sorry, what now?
Google, okay, delamination on the panels of, okay, yep. You're having to like learn everything and what's a big deal, what's going to cost to fix versus like what's not a big deal. So yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And probably that's why they say it takes a year as well.
A year off your life, maybe.
You like probably need the naivety of not knowing what you're getting into.
So last thing on the buying process, when you were going there as a single person, like did you take people with you because
sometimes
just to have a different view? Or like, because you might see things that they don't and vice versa.
Yeah. My mum was probably she's my trusted advisor. She's my go-to gal,
Love her.
So she would come if I was serious about a place. I also was conscious though of not being like every weekend or weekend, like let's go,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would go myself, vibe it out, be like, yep, this seems okay. And then go from there. You get pretty good though as well. I mean, anyone who's been in the market for a house will know you get good at like being quite like perceptive about the listings and actually like looking a bit deeper and digging a bit deeper and being like, this isn't even worth me visiting.
Yeah, right.
Again, it comes back to your point of like knowing what you're after and what's for you, So
yeah, nice. And so okay, we found the house.
We found the house.
We're buying the house.
The one. Yep.
There was some things that happened with the wood in the bathroom or something like that.
We
Or the
talked a little bit about
bath.
it. Yeah. So
what happened? Also, actually, how did you negotiate as considering this potential thing that happened?
So what I'd realised in my home buying journey was that you got to act fast. Like you kind of have to call dibs on a house. Like the market moves really quickly in New Zealand, at least when I was looking it was. And so you'd go to an open home, it might be the first open home weekend, and with a really good house, like then there are offers in, it's going,
Yeah.
And like an auction might hold things off. But still people are expressing their interest really early on. So for me, when I found the one, it had gone to auction, it had been passed in, and I went and saw it like literally maybe 2 days after it was passed in at auction. Walked around, was like, yes, and offered straight away.
Really?
Yeah, I was like,
no conditions.
Draw it up.
Where's the dotted line?
I want it.
It's been a year to the
conditions,
day.
Definitely conditions, because as a first home buyer, and I had a less than 20% deposit as well. So that made it be like, okay, like now we've got to, do all the due diligence. And I said to the real estate agent, who was fabulous, like, hey, look, I want to dot on my I's, cross my T's. Like, I'm, law student, like old law students, so I'm like, I want
You're in for a ride.
Yeah, I want to get the details right.
Yeah.
And I think she was like, oh dear. But it meant that we did like get it all squared away and offered, had my conditions. I think it was a finance condition, building, and then just like full due diligence, I think. So it kind of gives you a bit of a get out of jail free card. And I think, real estate agents and vendors are quite aware of that, that it's like a little bit hairy for them. But I kind of explained like, hey, look, this is why it is, because I'm a first home buyer and I do want to make sure I get this right. So let's do it. Then, got the building inspection back and there were a few issues. Nothing, well, I say nothing major. I didn't find it major personally, but basically they were like, the bathroom like is a bit of a problem, like that shower's leaking and don't know how long it's been leaking for, but high moisture readings was basically the theme. And yeah, the building inspector was real, like that classic Kiwi bloke where I called him up and I was like, what does it mean, man? Like, explain it. And he was like, look, I wouldn't shower in it.
Like, oh, I see.
Good. But he was really helpful because he kind of talked me through like, hey, look, the deck, there had been some like rot and stuff on different weatherboards, and he was like, you've got like 3 to 5 years, she'll be right, you know. The house had never been painted, so it's a board and batten house, so like timber, but it had never been painted, so it's just not protected against the elements, and there had been some delamination that had happened as part of that.
Is that why you know what delamination is?
That's why I know what delamination is, girl.
Yeah. Got it.
But yeah, they basically, like, he was like, that just means paint it, like don't stain it, because like the look is really, you know, cottage chic, and it could be quite fun if you stain it, but he was like, no, paint it, because it's going to add extra protection. So that was really helpful for me. And then I felt like, okay, he said, price it all up, what you're looking at, and reflect that in your offer. This is like some random building inspector that I never met giving me advice on it. And so I did that.
Wait, so sorry, when he's like, price it all up, but you're like, okay, like, do I buy a shower? Like,
yeah,
do I need to? Or,
like,
but did he give you a plan of like, this is what needs to be done, blah, blah, blah? You just like hit up Google.
He literally said pretty much as much as I just said to you on a phone call in a real like less than 5 minutes, like, she'll be right, Kiwi attitude.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'd be like, a little bit more detail, please.
Yeah, help. But the thing is, like, ain't no one doing it for you. You know, like, you've got to back yourself and figure that out, and like, be like, guess we're learning how to put a new bathroom in.
What delamination is?
Yeah.
Is this
delamination, Google?
Is this where we're like, so we need some builder friends?
Yeah, kind of. And like,
plumber friends?
Yeah. One of my girlfriends, thank goodness, had recently done a new bathroom, and she is like incredible on the detail, and she had like spreadsheeted the whole thing out, and she'd posted it at one stage to like one of her stories, and I was like, I know there's a spreadsheet in here somewhere and I will find it. So I just hit her up in the DMs and was like, hey, girlfriend.
You remember that spreadsheet?
Send me the spreadsheet. And she was good, because she was like, here's where you're going to save money. Like, here's where, you know, there's more cost involved. She had done a lot of the building work herself with her partner and her dad, so that had saved them a lot of money, whereas I knew I'd be needing to get a builder involved. And the thing is, like, you haven't got the house yet, so you're not going to be getting quotes. Like, you can't have people, you can't have tradies come in to actually quote the job. Like, you've just got to be like, think we'll just say, what, 10K? You know, it's a real YOLO. Like, it really is.
So what was that, like, how much did you budget versus spend? You don't have to say exact amounts, but was it like wildly different?
Nah, it's pretty on par.
Oh,
yeah.
Details. Good job.
Budget.
Yeah. So you didn't have to then dip into too much like of extra savings. And did you even have any extra savings after you'd used
so the
it all?
bank, after basically then I what do you call, like, updated my offer, I guess, or like changed my offer, and we negotiated that and like reached an agreement on the new price. And then the bank, my mortgage broker kind of liaised with the bank and explained that there's some renovations to be done, and that's why there's now a lower purchase price, and my client's budgeting this much for the renovations, and the bank said, okay, so now you need to keep that separate from your deposit. You can't use that for your deposit. So then the like 20% deposit that I'm nearly at, I'm then like, oh, far away from, because I'm having to keep back, you know, all of this cash. I mean, I could stay cash rich for a little longer, which was nice. It kind of like eased the transition into having a mortgage, because you still have like a big chunk of money in your account, but as the tradie bills start coming through, you're spending through that. So yeah, I was pretty conscious of keeping it on budget, and doing a lot of the work myself, and knowing like what am I going to do versus what do I need to get a professional to do. So yeah, that's when I transitioned from Rebekah home buying mode to Rebekah Bunnings mode, tradie lady.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love this era for you.
Yeah, it was a real era. That is it.
Well, are we
DIY,
not
baby.
still in it?
Oh, we're still in it.
Oh, yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
we're in the current era.
Yeah. Although I feel like the bulk of the era is done.
Right.
But like still, like I feel like I think I've got a repetitive strain injury in my hand from all the painting. Like my traps have traps these days, you know, painting on the ceilings.
Well, it's character building, I guess.
Character building. And honestly, like so proud. It's deeply
Yeah.
empowering. Like you learn, you know.
And you got a new bathroom out of it.
I got a new
Great.
bathroom out of it. So yeah, going into having my house, it was the new bathroom, like basically stripping the bathroom out and redoing that all before I moved in.
Yeah.
And full exterior house paint done by yours truly.
Yeah, nice.
And with a bit of help from mum and dad. Shout out mum and dad.
Yeah.
And then it ended up being a full interior house paint. And I also knocked out a wall between what had been like a laundry cupboard and a study to make it a two-beddy.
Oh, nice. So you were like, oh, well, while we're renovating the bathroom and doing stuff, let's add some value and just, you know, if the builder's here, he can knock that down.
And make it fit for purpose for my business. You know, I really had to do that.
Yeah.
Like I had to make the space. I had seen the vision, like in my mind's eye. I've been like, that's how we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
But then you've got to actually like, you know,
Execute on it.
Execute it. Yeah. Get it happening.
Nice. Well, hopefully, so with the decrease of the deposit, you then had to pay more higher mortgage repayments, I assume?
Yeah.
Is that the trade-off?
Yeah. Higher mortgage repayments. It's also when you're a less than 20% deposit person, you get penalty interest rates. So at the time that I was signing up, it was a full, they call it premium rates or whatever. So you pay more in interest than other people because of your low deposit. And so for me, that was a full 1% extra. Ouch, that hurts. And then cash back as well. You get, I think other people get whatever amount cash back.
Yeah, it depends on the bank.
I think they get a full 1% cash back.
Right.
And I think for me it's like half that. So I think I got like 0.5%.
Oh, because of the penalty.
Yeah, because you're a low deposit person. Also, like I didn't realize this, but if you've got less than a 20% deposit, each time you apply for lending for a new house, that is going to impact your credit score. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because it is viewed on paper as applying for a loan.
Oh.
Yeah.
That seems so ridiculous.
So, yeah,
because
it's
like a growth asset, not a credit card or
it
something.
just kind of like freaked me out at the time. And I think it's something I'd not come across anywhere. I'd done a lot of reading and a lot of like, you know, investigating all that stuff, and it hadn't come up. And so I was really shocked, and then learned it when like you're in the home and you've got this appalling credit score and like ain't nobody wanting to set you up on like utilities and stuff. You're like, I promise.
Where do you even see your credit score?
There are some like tools that you can look it up online. I can't remember the one I use, but there's like a handful of them.
Oh, I don't think I've ever checked mine before.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be enlightening or terrifying.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'd never even thought to, you know, I've never had a credit card even. So I was like,
why would I even have a score?
Yeah, I shouldn't have a score. And then when suddenly people are like, well, declined based on your credit score, I'm like, you what? My huh?
Someone's taken my identity and opened these accounts. Like, what?
And you kind of have to laugh. Like I ended up just being like, can someone manually look at this and understand that like can a human look at this, not a computer?
Yeah.
And straight away they were like, oh yeah, got it, done, you know. And then you're paying your mortgage for like all of about 2 seconds, and your credit scoring improves hugely, because as long as you're doing your repayments on time and your bills and stuff, then that's going to pick back up like stat. And so I was very relieved at that. I was like, oh, thank God.
We're on track.
Yeah.
Love it. So to just round out the property chat, we talked a bit off Mike about your, I guess, mindset around having a mortgage in terms of detachment. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I feel like, well, as we kind of touched on earlier, like for me, when I was looking for a house, I was at the stage where I was like, what direction's my life going to go in here? Like, is this house thing going to come together? Am I going to move overseas? Am I going to find a place to rent? Like, I was really putting feelers out in every direction. And yeah, you see kind of where it comes together, you know? And so there's an element of just like backing yourself and trusting life, like trusting the timing of your life to come together as it's going to. And then like I found the house, and for me, it's not so much like I wasn't that attached to getting the house. And I think that enabled me to negotiate stronger as well, because I was just like, YOLO. If it's not this, it's not this. If it doesn't come together, that's fine. I really, like, I obviously need somewhere to live, and I want to feel happy with what I'm doing. But if it's not this, it'll be the next thing, you know? And yeah, that really helped. And I think that level of detachment is important. And the same thing with, I think we talked about this as well, like the same thing with the mortgage and the house. Like, you can't over-identify with these things and be like, this is me. Like, I am a homeowner. Like, no, like, yes, but like
it's not your personality.
It's not your personality, you know. And like you're like, I feel with my house, like I'm a custodian of this space for now. Like, it really helped me feeling like if you've got a big chunky mortgage attached to your name, and every time you open your bank, you know, app, it's there.
Yeah,
like, it really helps to feel like, okay, I could sell tomorrow if I needed to. You know, I could, like, I can back out of this. It's not life or death. Like, you know, it's just a house. If you didn't have a house, you'd also be fine. If you never had the opportunity to have a house, you're also fine. And you can have a perfectly fine financial life and happy life, you know? We don't need these things to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, like, over-identify with the security of it, or the, like, life checklist, tick house, you know, next thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just not the reality, you know? You kind of got to be able to find peace with where you're at. And the same thing with, like, the mortgage itself. Like, you can't over-identify with, like, I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt against my name. Like, on the day-to-day, you're not conscious of that. Are you here now? Are you okay?
Are we
physically?
present? Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
like you can't feel it as a stress hanging over you every moment. You've got to be able to kind of detach from that and just live your life. So yeah.
Do you think this extends to your career, the mindset of detachment as well? In terms of, like, you know, there's a common theme, and I'm definitely guilty of this, of tying my identity to my job or to work.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. I think people definitely do, and you tie your identity to
what you do.
What you do. Like,
title,
even when we were talking earlier, and you're like, "Who are you?"
I know.
Like,
I was like, how's she gonna answer this?
Yeah, like, my true answer is like, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. You know.
Like, also with a side of, like, Citta.
Yeah, well, like, with a side of all the things we have to do to, like, live in the material world, right? But, like, is that who you are? Like, am I Rebekah, head of HR at Citta? Am I Rebekah even? You know, like, we can get real esoteric. You know, we're chatting about that offline.
Yeah.
But yeah, you over attach, and I definitely see that with people with their salaries too. Like, where people go, you know, I earn over 100K a year, or like 6 figures, baby, you know, like, they over attach. And, like, without that, if you lost that, if that weren't you, you'd still be okay, physically okay, you know? And yes, like, I get, like, there's real world things to think about, living costs, you know, all of that stuff that we have to factor in. But, like, if we are so privileged already, like, we are educated with real world experience. No one can take that away from you. Like, once you've built that CV and you've built that, like, that's you, and you offer something, and you're always going to find a value exchange if you stay hopeful and look in the right direction, you know? So, like, what if tomorrow Christine were to be like, I don't want to do Kernel anymore. Like, I want to be a barista. I want to make the best fucking coffee anyone's ever had.
Yeah.
You know, power to you.
Yeah.
Who's to say that that's, like, some stage of your life you might have thought that's shameful. Where's the shame in that? You know, like, that is actually great. Like, you're going to love your life.
Do you know what? It's funny. I personally would feel that a lot more now than I would when I was, like, early 20s, because
Really?
yeah, when I first finished university, I had a job at a fencing company, ironically, that we're talking about laminating.
Yeah, nice. Wait, could you build me a fence?
Yeah.
Girlfriend, I need a fence. Come over.
Yeah, I don't know if I can build it. I could probably sell it to you. Anyway. And I just personally really didn't enjoy that experience. And I ended up like selling all my stuff, literally everything I owned. I quit the job. It was so freeing. I've never felt so like true to myself as well, to be like, I don't have all these possessions, I don't have all this crap, I don't even have to pay rent because I'm not tied into anything, I don't have a car, you know, like it was so like you feel naked in some ways but also completely free. And I think that I don't know what the conclusion I'm drawing here is, but I went traveling and then it's like extends to that. But thinking about would I do that now, and am I attached to my job, I don't know if I would be so willing to do it. And I think that comes with, I don't know, the stage of life, mindset. If you're not doing that in other ways, often you fall back into like being not stagnant but just like limited in your thinking, I think. Or if you're not meditating.
Shout out to meditation.
Yes,
just keeping us grounded. But I think for me it was almost the reverse. In my early 20s, like I was at law school, I was so overly attached to what people thought of me and like what was the right thing to be doing. Like, is this gonna take me to where I need to go? Is this like, you know, building my life in the right direction? Like just too conscious of that. And you kind of, well, for me anyway, like I think part of growing up has been like peeling back some of those layers and like realizing it doesn't actually matter what anyone else thinks, like, because at the end of the day it's you know, and it's your opinion of you. We're like, other people aren't thinking of us anywhere near as much as we think they are. And so it's like, actually, what are you good with? And I think this is a hugely like financially relevant thing as well, because half of what we spend our money on because we think other people will notice, other people think I'm so cool if I've got this car, if I've got
like
these clothes. To fit in, you know. And it's like, actually, like, if you strip it all away, as you did, look at you.
I mean, I wouldn't call me a role model, but let's say.
But if you strip it all away, you really realize like who's really like in your life, who's really got your back, who are your true friends, and also do I like me without all of this stuff, without like anything to my name, without like, you know, the job title, the house,
the salary,
whatever, the salary. Do I like who I am? Can I spend time with myself? Am I my own best friend, you know? I think that's true wealth to me anyway.
Oh, preaching to the choir. Love this.
Yeah.
I think it's such a nice mindset reminder, because it's so easy to get caught up in, you know, the latest thing or the trend or what everyone else is doing. It's the FOMO with property. It's the like never enoughness, really.
Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, like obviously I've gone and bought a house with that mindset, but then when you have it, like it's not a keeping up with the Joneses to me. Like it is it's a beautiful gift. Like for me, it's a real gratitude experience of like every day I wake up in my house and I'm fucking stoked, you know. I love it. I really love it. And I don't think it's like nothing. It's not promised. Like, yes, today I'm the owner on the bit of paper, but life can change on a dime, you know. So for every moment that you have it, appreciate it, you know.
Do you think it's also like what I'm hearing there is being comfortable with uncertainty as well?
Yeah, I think that's life, right?
Yeah, but also in the role of attachment, because I think you attach when you try to control as well.
Yeah.
But if you detach and you don't try to control, then you can like move through the flow, you know, the life of ups and downs a bit.
Yeah, and probably like also just not seeing it as an extension of yourself. Like this house isn't me, you know. I think that's really key as well. Yeah.
I think about that also in the example of total like net worth in terms of, you know, you can apply the same logic to your share portfolio or the value of your car or, you know, all those things that have a monetary value.
This is huge. Yeah. And it's so important because you think if you took it all away tomorrow, you still have intrinsic value.
Yeah.
Like, and I really, I think that is the most important thing. Like, your net worth is not your worth.
Your self-worth.
Yeah. It's not your worth as a human being. It's really important to remember that, because also we go through seasons. Like financially, we go through seasons, and like you're going to be in a time period where you are cash rich and you're just, YOLOing, spend, and it is the dream, and you can enjoy that. And then you go through periods where it's like, holy heck, there are bills coming in. I don't know how I'm going to pay this. It's humbling as hell. And like that needs to be, that's an important part of you as well. And you can't be in that phase thinking, oh my God, because I'm in this, I'm shit. I'm not good enough. I'm not okay. Like, no, none of that. You're just struggling to pay the thing right now, So yeah, I think that's really important. And like leaning into the seasons and realizing the seasons you're in, and coming back to the comparison thing as well, not being like, you see someone in their season, a season of abundance, and you're like, oh,
Europe holiday 2K24.
Yeah, like everyone, shout out to everyone in Europe. You see them and you're like, oof, it looks good. Yeah. But then again, see the season you're in. I'm comfy with the season I'm in, donning my paint attire and
getting
painting another
RSI
ceiling.
or whatever.
Yeah.
It's also a matter of you don't know what you don't know. So like, how's the trip funded? Pulling back the curtain a little bit to dig a bit deeper. It's not always like shiny and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole walk a mile in someone else's shoes thing. Like, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And like, really at the end of the day, I think it's just staying in your lane and like being comfortable with what you're doing. And is this how you want to be spending your money and your time? Because if seeing other people's experiences making you think, I don't like my life, then change your life. Like, you're one decision away from a totally different life, So what is it that you can do today to make your life different? And it might be that you like, if you're in a real conserve mode and you're in this like savings season and you see other people in a season of abundance, might mean like that you need to start spending a little more on you. And you need to start like treating yourself a little bit and like, spending on some luxuries for yourself. And that's totally valid. I definitely went through a season of that where like, after I'd grown up and through all of this like save mentality, it meant that I couldn't spend on myself. Like I really did not know how to spend on myself. And I had to, it was probably after we met actually, and after my time at Food Bag, that then I was like, oh, like, I'm worth it. I can spend some money on me, like I'm worth the luxury.
Yes, you are.
I've got the money, so let's go,
We're going to town.
Yeah, and also realizing that if you want to value yourself, you can also place financial value in yourself,
Or do you mean in terms of upskilling and learning? Or
upskilling and learning, I think that's really key. Like for me, that was like, okay, I'm going to invest in learning to meditate. I'm going to invest in learning the electrolysis stuff because that's something I'm passionate about and want to know more about. And for me, travel was always super important. So like investing and learning more like different cultures and seeing different things, but it can also be like, she wants some Botox, baby,
She's heading
Fair
now.
Makeup,
Good skincare.
Good skincare. The level 3 Mecca Beauty Loop, ain't nothing wrong with it,
Here for it.
And I think there's a lot of that, like feeling good about your appearance. Like, it's ultimately the face that you present to the world, and you deserve to feel good in your skin. So whatever that is for you, and like for different people, it's going to look different. But, it could be you're keeping your hair done, like keeping your like outfits on point, whatever it is. But like, we all deserve to feel good. And I think that can be a really hard thing when you're in a season of not having enough, because you can really feel that of like, I don't look the way I want to look. I can't afford to dress the way I want to dress and all of that. And so again, it comes back to not equating that worth, like not having the value to spend on that with your self-worth, and which is hard, really hard to do. And also realizing that the like true friends or like people of worth in your life aren't going to look at you and go, Christine's not had her hair done in a while. What's she up to?
What's that weird t-shirt?
Yeah. And place any less value in you. Like if you've got people around you that are seeing you not looking turned out enough and thinking something, like that's not right.
Are they your people?
Yeah, exactly. So
I think about this and how can I be better at this in terms of not projecting out your feelings, really. On a podcast recently, I was talking about how I was just feeling like I'm kind of getting a little bit left behind financially. But I mean, when I look at the facts, I know that's not necessarily true and that we're making progress, but it is the feeling of like comparison, really. Yeah. And that's what then starts to bog you down. And then it means that you don't celebrate your friends as much because it's like an insecurity thing. So I guess any tips around how, if someone was going through that season, how they could change their mindset or try to, have empathy maybe for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of like self-work that you can do, and it's finding something that is for you. For me, what I've found that really works is meditation. I know we've talked about it, but just having a practice that grounds me daily in the whole, I'm not this body, I'm not these things that I have. It's that grounds me in my true nature, I think is really important. But for other people, that might be going to the gym, or that might be, going for a walk, or whatever it is for them that's going to take it to a place. It might be therapy or something as well. Talking to the people around you, journaling. Love a little journal moment. But yeah, I think it's important to like find your way of de-stressing, and also just like having that self-reflection is a really powerful thing. Like becoming aware of like, oh, I'm not happy for my friends because they've got a thing that I don't have here. Yeah. And like taking time to sit with that emotion and feel it because it's valid and you're allowed, but also let it go and like not hold on to this and let it become your identity that like, oh, I'm not happy for anyone that's having children because I'm not having children, or I'm not happy for anyone that's buying a house because I'm not buying a house, or whatever it is. Like you've got to be able to just like hold both. Like both can be true
at the same time.
Yeah. You can be jealous or want that for yourself and be envious, and like you can also be totally stoked for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I am going to do this. I need to journal.
Journal. Love journaling, honestly.
But also meditation.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one last thing that I want to talk about. Just, I guess, the role of money in the career, because you sit on the other side in your day-to-day in an organisation, in the sense that you obviously have oversight of the everyone's pay because you're working in HR.
Yeah.
What has that experience been like for you? And firstly, also with your career moving from law to HR, like why did you do that?
Cool. I'll start with the law to HR question.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, I studied law. I was at uni for 6.5 years. And I think I got started studying it. I enjoyed studying it, but coming to the end of my studies, I was like, what am I going to do with this? Where's this going to go? And I really couldn't get a foot in. I felt like I couldn't get a foot in. I didn't know anyone practicing law. Like there was no one in my family doing that. It was a bit of a period of economic downturn, and I felt like all of the jobs were like wanting 2 years PQE. I hadn't applied myself during my studies, didn't really do any internships or get any work experience. It felt like, I don't know if this is specific to law or if this is other people experience this as well, but I felt like it was a bit of a closed community, and I keep kind of banging at the door and ain't nobody letting me in, and that was probably also to do with a bit of stuff going on in my own life, like where I just felt that way. Yeah. But basically what I did is went traveling. I really had the idea of like, okay, when you've got the time, you don't have the money. When you've got the money, you don't have the time. So YOLO, we're jumping on a flight, and just went around Europe for a bit by myself, which was great, kind of clear the head and think about what's next. Yeah. Came back, I had a really long job search ahead of me. I was looking for a job for about 8 months. So I really do know, and I think that's a good experience to have had now in an HR capacity, because I know that that's really tough for people. You know, you're applying to all these jobs, you're not hearing back. It's harrowing. I try to be really mindful of that in my day-to-day job. But eventually my dad actually saw the food bag listing, and he was like, Beck, you love food. This is a bit of you. Get in there.
For anyone listening who's wondering what the food bag is, it's my food bag. Yeah. So that's how that's how Rebekah and I met.
Yes,
is at my food bag.
Yep. And it was beautiful meeting you. You were like one of the most welcoming people initially.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and I remember
nice.
like the same openness and like inquisitiveness that you have now. Like you definitely had back then. Like when I joined, you were like, "Who are you? What are you about? Let's chat.
Tell me all my story.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about money?"
And now you're a podcast host. Look at how life unfolds.
Yeah. So did you join my food bag in HR?
I joined my food bag as a customer love manager. Yep.
Oh, so long ago, I can barely remember.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a thing for me as well. I felt like I'd worked my like high school years and everything and all through uni in customer service positions, and then you graduate and get a customer service position, and definitely I was a bit younger. You know, you got a bit more of an ego. I was like, what am I doing, you know? And I got that job and loved every second of it. Like, it was so wonderful, met so many amazing people, met some of my best friends like in that job, you know. And so that was great. And I'd mentioned in my second interview, I mentioned, because they were like, you've studied law up to how long are you going to be here? Should we invest in training you? You know? And I was like, look, I'm figuring it out. You know, I don't know. I love people, and I can really see myself like moving into HR eventually, or anything people related. And I think their ears were kind of pricked up, because they were like, we don't have HR right now, so if there's someone that we can throw that all at. And they did. Like, largely when I started, it was a team of maybe like 10 in customer service, and you all were, you know, on your own personal laptops, you know, making calls. It was real startup phase, you know. And when I came on board, it was like, okay, the people, just fix it, help,
do culture,
hire, go, and that was great. So yeah,
that's awesome.
That was that.
Yeah, okay. So that's quite cool how it kind of evolved also at my food bag.
Yeah.
And then you stayed there for a while, and then how did you end up at Citta?
Applied. Yeah,
okay.
I finished up at food bag, went to London for a bit, was staying with my sister there and just hanging out, and then I'd had a bit of a life change and was again like, what is next?
What am I doing?
Doing with my life? And yeah, then applied. I was applying for all these jobs in London, to be honest, trying to make that all come together, and applied for one job back in New Zealand. And my boss, Emmett, called and was like, have I got the job for you? And so it all kind of came together from there. And yeah, I've loved my time at Citta. Like, amazing people, really wonderful people to be around, and beautiful product, like so stunning. And I guess that's also probably formed part of my home ownership journey, because like, if you're surrounded by all this beautiful homeware product all the time, you're like, I'll buy that.
Maybe I need some walls to put it in.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that's been a really fortunate thing as well. To like, I feel very fortunate to be working at Citta while I've bought my first home, because, you know, lets you kind of ball hard and make it look really pretty.
Love that. And so I guess the role of money, you know, seeing the experience of seeing other people's salaries and watching people come into the company, you know, the salary negotiation thing. Yeah. What has that been like?
Yeah. So I think I'll start with the whole idea about like that I'm exposed to the wage bill, if you will.
Yep.
And like, yes, definitely. That's always been part of my career, so I've always kind of known that there is that value equation going on. I feel like in HR there's like the human, and then there's the resource, and like there's all these human parts to it that you do day to day, and then when you're looking at the resource, you are looking at the more analytical stuff, and you're looking at numbers, and you're looking at the spreadsheet, and does this balance and all that side of it. So again, it's probably got that like healthy level of detachment. There is an innate level of like professionalism and confidentiality that has to come with that. but like understanding those numbers and how it all works behind the scenes is quite valuable, I guess. And but you just kind of put your analytical brain on and geek out over a spreadsheet for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that works. And then in terms of like recruitment, is that your other question?
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I just wanted to say the HR bill is usually one of the biggest costs of business as well, right? And so managing that resource from a business perspective, that's quite an important job.
Yeah.
Is it? Would you say?
I'd say.
Yeah. You're like, yep, that's me.
That's me. Look, okay, I feel it. The pressure, Christine.
Sorry.
No, it is. And you like, I feel like all businesses in New Zealand, like at the moment, it's struggling a bit. It's a difficult economic time. I've always worked for like both my food bag and Citta. They're like small to medium businesses when I'm working for them.
Yeah.
Family-owned businesses, New Zealand-owned businesses. So that is very much the context that I know and understand when I'm thinking about a wage bill.
Yeah.
But look, the reality is it does have real-time costs for the business, and there are a lot of increased costs that businesses are facing. You think about things like living wage, and like, of course, every employer wants to be a living wage employer, but that's like hiked a lot in the last couple of years, and that's really tough for businesses to face into when the economy is as it is and sales have slowed and all of that. So, there's a lot that feeds into it, of course. And then it's also, the actual like services that your businesses are providing and everything, and wanting to make sure that you're keeping everything appropriately resourced so that the team can keep doing the do. Like, do we have enough people doing that thing? Do we need someone else in that role, or whatever the thing is? So there is a lot to consider. You kind of tend to set, like, just like life, you tend to set your budget annually at the start of the year. Revisit if you have to, if things are really tight, or or whatever, or a real strong need comes up in a business as well. There are all sorts of things you check in on it monthly. It's kind of like managing a personal budget too. It's
like a marketing budget as well.
In
terms of advertising, you get your budget at the start of the financial year usually, and that needs to last you to the end of the year. And so you need to spread it evenly, and there's obviously sometimes unexpected costs or opportunities that might come, or like pitching for more resource if you need to grow.
And I don't feel like, I mean, maybe this is just in my role, but I don't feel like I own it alone. Like, the senior leaders and directors of the business ultimately make the decision about, where they'll spend more value and all that sort of thing. You're kind of just facilitating and keeping everything up to date and that sort of thing, making sure conversations are being had, or you crunch the numbers on, do the due diligence behind the scenes of like, if we added this role right now, here's how much it would cost, here's what's the market, like what the market's paying for this kind of role at the moment. That's more of my role in it anyway.
So on that, when you're creating a new role and you're looking to, I guess, industry benchmarks for the salary, what are your go-tos? Like, how do you figure that out?
That's a great question. So I feel like you look at kind of your bands and that sort of thing. So like salary bands, where a role sits within an organisation, what responsibilities it has, like, is it managing direct reports, what, all of that side of things. And then you're also looking at the market and what other people are paying for that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a bit of jigsaw, like piecing it all together. But that would be the main thing. How
does your industry play into it, in terms of, let's say finance versus homeware?
So
or specialised role as well.
I guess they kind of look to more like public, private, that kind of thing, right. And you do have to be mindful of that, like, because you kind of look at what's all the data doing, what are other people doing, what's the industry doing, but then you also come back to actually your wage bill and what's fair and reasonable within that.
True.
Like, what are other people paid within that team? Is that going to make sense? So there's a lot to it, but industry definitely does factor in, and again, that size of the business, I think, factors in. More corporate environments versus others.
Fair enough. And in terms of the salary,
yes,
how do you manage, I guess, like that point around a team, if you're hiring in, and that person is, I don't know, really good, comes in really high with the salary, but you really want them, but ultimately that might upset the team dynamic. Is that like okay, we just can't, we have to, stick in these bounds? Or is that the point at which you kind of try to work with that employer to be like, hey, well, we can offer you flexible working, or like,
yes,
other things?
I feel like this is the way that like HR is like dating. And you kind of just have to be really aware of that, because like you're kind of, and it's both sides, right? Like it's both sides coming to the table, because it is a relationship at the end of the day, like between employee and employer. It's both sides coming to the table and going, this is what I need. So I think for candidates, like it pays for them to be really direct about like, I want 100 to 120K. Fair enough. If you need that and that's what your experience commands and everything, fair enough.
Yeah.
And equally, like if the employer's going, well, this role for us is 65 to 75, then why are you guys on a date?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. So getting that stuff out of the way quite quickly, or being confident. I think Kiwis can be like a bit more reserved and are like, oh, money, I'm not ready to talk about that, but actually like it is something to lead with, because it is, none of us working for free. Like that's the reality. Like you need your money. You got to get your money. So there's that. And then from the employer side, yes, there are situations where someone might come in higher than you expected, and you'll go, well, is this still a conversation? Just like in a relationship where someone might be like, hey, I really need this to stay in, and you're going to be like, maybe I'll compromise.
Yeah, you're worth it. Yeah.
Commitment. Okay, let's do it. No. But like it kind of, it is just that open conversation both ways. I think though as well for candidates, it's about being really like not overinflating. Like you want to be realistic as well about what you what the value you bring, the experience you bring, but also what the market like is doing and what's reasonable. So just to increase also your chances of actually finding the right opportunity for you. And oftentimes, like I think a good HR person will facilitate those conversations so that you can be quite open and feel more comfortable to say, look, for me it is this, and then they can say, well, look, for the business it is this. Okay, there's a bit of wiggle room there. What are we talking? Car parks? So there are other benefits. Look, we pay the phone plan, flexible working, all of these things that actually matter for your day-to-day life as well. And then yes, there'll be the other, like the more high roller end of benefits as well that some companies will be able to offer, like insurance and that side of things. That makes a pretty major difference. Or like a well-being allowance, and they're going to pay for your gym membership or something, and like all of those things are just whittling down your day-to-day living costs. So that's something to consider too. And then obviously we're also at work to learn and to contribute and to have a team environment, and so you probably want to make sure that that culture is the right fit for you, and you're learning from the right kind of people that you want to be learning and the types of things you want to be learning. So it's not just a dollar exchange, but there are a lot of things to weigh up, and I think the best way to tackle it for both parties is just to be really honest. Yeah.
Do you think that that's why there's a benefit to having the salary band on the job description, or like where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I guess there is a benefit to that. I mean, like there's also value in it being like it's a starting point, right? Yeah. It's like, again, it's like dating, right? Someone will be like, I'm not looking for anything serious, or I want a long-term relationship and I want to have kids in the next 2 years, and you're like, okay, well, but being straight up about it is valuable.
Know what you want,
you know what you want, and you're more inclined to find people that are also aligned with you if you're being honest with what that thing is. So I think that's just really important. Does it mean it wouldn't change? Like oftentimes I'll be having a initial phone screen with candidates, and they'll say, so wait, what is the job band for this? Like, what's the salary range for this? And I'll say, look, it's this. And they'll say, is there wiggle room on that? And I'll say, nah, probably not, not at the moment. And they'll go, okay, well, not for me. Let's check in if anything changes, and then I know where they stand. They know where I stand. We haven't wasted anybody's time, Yeah.
So I guess a part of HR must be having these hard conversations if potentially expectations aren't aligned, or maybe if someone feels like they should be paid more in an existing role, or they want to talk to you about what the growth opportunity is in that way, who do you have to be successful in those moments? Or like, what's the mindset, I guess, that you take in those conversations from an HR perspective?
Yeah, I think for me, like, because you are kind of dancing that dance between the business needs and the needs of the individual that's coming to you as well. But how I like to do it anyway is to sort of really listen and like really tap into what that person needs from me in that moment. And kind of I think part of that comes with like you have to stay pretty grounded and like emotionally regulate and all of that to be able to lean in, hear what they're saying and respond. Like if you don't have the information, you might be going back to other people in the business or other leaders in the business to get more information before you can come back to someone. But then ultimately, like, you want to deliver a clear message, and it might not always be my message. Like, I might have not wanted to do it that way for that individual, but I have to be that kind of conduit and explain the rationale behind something. I think in those situations, like, clear is kind, you know, and that's what it really comes down to. Like, no one likes to feel like the wool's being pulled over their eyes, or it's not, there's kind of a bit of cloak and dagger going on. And I'm fortunate to work in a business that really values transparency and that will like be really on board with us treating our employees that way, in terms of that we'll just give them the honest, like, here's why not, you know? Yeah.
Do you think that having transparency over your salary internally is a like constructive thing?
I don't think so. And look, I have a way of doing that. I'll go in with like a real strong opinion, and then it's loosely held, and I can probably be talked out of it. I guess there's arguments for both sides, right? And I think I've come across, I was listening to a podcast a while ago about like a work environment where it's really way more open and transparent, and everyone kind of knows what everyone's on. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because I know even for me, when I first was exposed to a wage bill, I was like, huh? She's on what? You know? Because you attach that ego, that value, all of those things. And then you make it personal and you're like, well, they're off getting coffee again. We pay them for that, you know? Like, you can't help it. It's human nature. Like, everyone's going to do it.
So true.
Do I think that it's information that absolutely everyone's prepared to deal with or equipped to deal with? Not necessarily. And yet, as I say, it's a strong opinion, loosely held. I could probably be tempted the other way too.
I was just thinking, because if someone, let's say, is new coming into the business and then they are like having a conversation with their colleague, do the same role. Obviously, I understand that no two lives and experience and knowledge and whatever is the same. But if they then feel like, oh, I'm so underpaid relative to this person, or if they're the person that's paid a lot more to the other person, you know, like, how do you manage that, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't know if that's just me, but I always had that innate professionalism, even when I was a retail sales assistant on the shop floor, that you don't talk salaries, you know, because do you want to know? Again, comparison is the thief of joy. Were you happy with the rate you were on before you knew they get 50 cents per hour more than you? And it's the same equation if they're on 100K more than you, because again, it's you're equating your value as a human being to what you're being paid for that job. Well, no, because you're still as valuable as a human being. We're all innately valuable. But this person might have worked, 5 years in a retail position, and you've worked only hospo jobs before, and you've actually never worked retail sales, or whatever the case is, whatever the industry is. So you're not aware of all of the rationale that went into it for that candidate. And, it does come down to someone's negotiation as well. Like, at the outset, what they say, like, that is your strongest time to negotiate, is before you're working for a business, I guess, and saying this is what it takes to get me on board. Now, again, in this economy, pays to be realistic, because you don't want to have been the person that goes 100K or bust. And it might be bust. It's
a risk.
It's a risk. So you do have to be realistic about what your situation is. But I don't see the value in knowing what everybody else is on. If you're not someone that can detach and not take it personally.
Yeah. I think my opinion on this kind of wavers in some ways, or like jumps between the two, because on one hand I do think that talking about money openly is a really great thing, and you don't know what you don't know ultimately, and if you are the person in the situation that is being paid less, I think having a sounding board or a reference point can be really helpful. But I do also think that like knowing myself and knowing if you are like affected by that information in a way that's maybe not rational, then is that information going to help you or hinder you, really? Yeah, which is just me regurgitating what you already said. So.
That's a good thought.
It's interesting just finding the balance between the two, and I think this speaks to finance generally with how much information is enough. Like, do you really need to know more? Or like, at what point are you just going to be happy with that amount of knowledge?
Yeah. And again, seasons. Like, you might be in a time of your life where you are career high flying and you want to be earning the most that you possibly can. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You also might be in a time period where you want to focus on family, other things are going on in your life, and you just want a little bit of money coming in on the side.
Yeah.
Like, that's fair enough too, you know? So, and then if you're that person and you're on less and you're perfectly happy with that because it's aligned with what you want, and then you find out someone else is on more and now you're not happy with it, you'd have rather just not know that someone else is on more, you know? So,
yeah.
But there is a fairness to be had there, and companies have to be really responsible about that and have integrity when they're looking at that, of like, you know, like when we conduct our remuneration review each year, looking at where does the team sit within the band, what's fair and reasonable, you know, is there disparity here between team members versus the experience that they bring and what they offer. So those are all things that factor into that equation as well.
How do you measure like value to the business, and or like why someone should get a pay rise? Like, is it tied to, you know, how much is it the industry benchmarks and the salary bands versus that person's individual experience versus their performance at the company? Like, is it one of those things or is it multiple?
I think it's multiple. I think it's multiple, and I mean, again, that's my, like, the business context that I come from, you know, so it would be different in different businesses, but I think the level of experience in the role, but also the contribution that they offer is important. It is ultimately a value exchange. And, you know, if we think about like when people ask for increases as well, or like how that goes, I think being really aware that like if you are wanting more money, also what are you contributing is an important thing. You know, some people, it's like kind of an old school HR idea that like you do the job that you're wanting to be paid for before you get paid for it. Like maybe a component, like definitely, I mean, just on like a human level, you're like, everyone is going to feel more happy about investing in someone that's investing in them, right? So, and it's no different in a business context. If you see someone really going above and beyond and they're showing up and they're doing the thing and they nail their workload every time, that is someone that when it comes time to do pay rises, you're already thinking of them because they're doing the thing. You know, just things to be aware of.
It's such a tricky one. I mean, I could keep asking you more questions about this, but I realise that we probably should round out. So, thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable and chatting us through your home buying journey. Really enjoyed that, as well as obviously the insights around HR. Big thanks to Kernel for enabling us to do what we do. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe wherever you're tuning in, whether that's video on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you have questions for myself or Rebekah, feel free to get in touch at It's No Secret NZ on Instagram. Send us episode requests, feedback and more. And how can people get in touch with you? On LinkedIn? Is that a good place?
LinkedIn's a great place.
You
can find my electrolysis business at the electrolyst on Instagram. But otherwise you can find me on LinkedIn.
Nice. Love it. Cool. Otherwise, until next week, we will say see you later.